Hi there. Okay, you finished symbolizing premise one. Well done. Okay, we have another premise and we have a conclusion to symbolize. I'm just going to ask you to pause and see if you get the right answer instead of giving you multiple choices. I think if you've done premise one, you should be able to get premise two. It looks very similar, and I bet you can do premise three. I'm going to suggest you pause here and try to get it yourself, but then I'm going to talk through them, and then we'll just go on and I'll show you my answers, and then we'll do a truth table. Okay, so pause and think. Okay. So the first one we figured out was if I believe in God, then a conjunction of two things. Conjunction because and. Each of the two things is a conditional. That's how we wound up with D being the right answer. B arrow in the square brackets and where the two conjuncts, the two things joined together by an and, are each conditional sentences. Okay, we have the same structure here, except the antecedent of our big conditional, instead of being B, instead of being if I believe in God, in premise two, it's if I don't believe in God. So we want a negation in front of the B. Then, so not B arrow, square brackets, an and sentence. So first conjunct is if God exists, I lose. So E for exists, arrow L for lose, and second conjunct. If he does not, I do not gain. So if not E, then not G. That's going to be your premise two. It looks just like this one, except swap the G and the L and move some of the negations around. That's all. Okay, conclusion. From this, it follows that if I believe, I will either gain or not lose, while if I do not believe, I will either lose or at best fail to gain. I think this while is functioning like an and, because this conclusion sentence says this thing is true and this thing is also true. And what's the connective that tells you the things on either side of me are both true? That's an and. So we have this if sentence and this if sentence. Okay, so here's what I think we wind up with. Here's the original argument. It's moved on the page, but it's the same words. Here's our symbolization key. You already symbolized this. Here's our premise two. Here's the conclusion. The conclusion is an and sentence where each conjunct is an arrow sentence, right? That arrow is the main connective of the thing inside the square brackets. So we have, if I believe, then I gain or I don't lose. And if I don't believe, then I lose or I don't gain. If I believe, I will either gain or not lose. If I believe, I will gain or not lose. While if I don't believe, I will either, if I don't believe, I will either lose or fail to gain. Okay, so now we have to do a truth table. We have 1, 2, 3, 4 atomic sentences. So we are going to have 2 to the power of 4. 2 times 2 times 2 times 2, 16 lines. My slide making software can only comfortably fit 8 at a time. So I'm going to do the top half and then the bottom half of our truth table. And we're going to do one sentence at a time. So here's premise one. Premise one, this whole thing is premise one. Again, it's spaced out so we can do rough work. But we're going to fill this out in parts. Okay, so how can you tell that this is the top half of our truth table? Well, notice that B is true all the way down. Remember, when you set up your truth table for something with 4 atomic sentences, we start on the right and we alternate TF, 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 TF down 16 lines, then 2 T's, 2 F's, 2 T's, 2 F's, then 4 T's, 4 F's, 4 T's, 4 F's, and finally we'll have 8 T's in the top half for B, the one on the far left, and left to you, left looks that way. 8 T's on the far left and 8 F's on the bottom part. So right now, because we're only having T for B, we are in the top half of the truth table. So what are we figuring out? What's the main connective of this sentence? The one where we're going to put our official answer, the letters I'll put in bold. It's the arrow. So before I figure out what's going to go there, I'm going to figure out what goes under here. And to do that, I have to figure out first what goes under this arrow, and what goes under this arrow, and then I'll apply an and rule to them. Then I'll apply the arrow rule to B and whatever's under the and. So I'll just copy over B because that's easy. E arrow G, I'm just looking at these two things and applying the arrow rule, where true arrow true is true, true arrow false is false, same here. False arrow true is true, false arrow false is true. So we get this column of values. Okay, you might be comfortable for yourself. You might be advanced enough that when you look at something like this, you just think, I'll just look at E and reverse the values in my mind. I'll look at L and reverse the values in my mind and then apply an arrow rule to them. I personally find I often get confused when I try to do that and try to remember to flip everything before I apply the arrow rule. So I find it very helpful when you have these negated atomic sentences to copy it over, do some extra rough work. So I'm just going to do that. I take the E column, flip the values, that gets me this column. Take the L values and flip them and I get these values. And now to fill in the rough work under here, I'll put my fingers on those values and fill them in. So F arrow F is F, F arrow T is you figure it out, F arrow F is T, T arrow T is T, T arrow T is T. So you need to figure out what goes in spots 1. It's got to be the same because those are both F arrow T. You got to figure out what goes in spots 2. Again, same combination, same things. Pause if you need to. And here comes the answer. So F arrow T is T, T arrow F is F, and there's our column for this arrow. Now we're going to take this column, and this column, and apply an AND rule to them. So we're going to get this. T and T is T, F and T is F, and so on. So pause if you need to. Figure out what goes in 1, 2, 3, and 4. And I'll tell you what I put in there. So I have T and T, that is T. F and T is F. T and F is F. T and F is F. And here's the column I get for my AND. Okay, finally, we're about to get our official answer. All of this has been rough work so far. I'm going to put my finger on the B column. I'm going to put my finger on this AND column. Those are the two things I'm putting together with an arrow. Why? Because the AND is the main connective for this whole thing in brackets, which means this column under the AND gives me the truth value of the whole thing in brackets there. So I'm doing B arrow the thing in brackets. In other words, this column arrow this column. So here's part of what I get. It's bold now because this is the official answer for the whole of premise 1. So T arrow T is T, and so on. Okay. Pause if you need to. Figure out what goes in those lines, and I'll show you my answers. I'll show you my answers now. Okay, so first of all, T arrow T is T, T arrow F is F, T arrow T, nope, sorry, T arrow F, I gotta keep my fingers in the right spot. T arrow F is F, T arrow F is F. Okay, here's the top half of the truth table for premise 1. Now we're doing the bottom half. I've taken, notice what's happening to the column on the left. Those B's are changing from all T to all F. Okay, once again, I will copy over all of this stuff. Notice that since there's no B in here, in those brackets, all that I've changed between the top half and the bottom half is whether B is true or false. So whatever goes under this should be the same on both halves, because E, G, and L, they have exactly the same pattern. It repeats in the top half and the bottom half of the truth table. So that's all the same. But now B, instead of being all true, is going to be all false. Hey, before I even put it up, I bet you can already figure out, if you know the arrow rule, I bet you know what all of these values are going to be. Do you know what it is? Here's your hint. What's the one way to make an arrow sentence false? You need to have true antecedent and false consequent. I'm not going to look at the consequent. I already see the antecedent, B, is false everywhere, so that means this is going to be true all the way down. So there you go. Take these two things that I've given you, the top half and the bottom half of the truth table for premise 1, put one on top of the other, and you have a complete truth table for premise 1. So I said I don't have room for more than 8 rows on my slides. I also don't have room for those for premise 2 and the conclusion. But when you're writing this on the page, they should all be in one table. The other premises should be right beside premise 1. The other premise and the conclusion should be right beside. So fill those out. See what you think. I'm going to leave it to you. You tell me, is the argument valid or not? Tell me by email or come to one of the drop-in sessions. We'll see what you think. Here's another argument you could work on. I'm not going to do it in these videos unless I get a request to do so. Here are some other things you can do. Test this. Do a truth table for these. Tell me what you think. Also, if you run out of examples, if you run out of practice problems, if you've done all the ones in the textbook, send me email. I will send you more. There's lots more you can do. Okay, great job, guys. You can do this. I'll talk to you soon.